Hi, Joanne. I dropped it in the chat, but you did forget to mention it. I'm so glad that you mentioned the book. That was the most important thing. But I was gonna, well, it depends. I was just about to message Emily and say that we were having a problem with the spreadsheet, so that we could check the registration and see who else. But I don't want to bother her if we can help it. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I think it's only a problem if you see somebody who you don't think registered, but they can't get in without, you know, paying. So exactly. All right. Hello and welcome. This is the first day of our masterclass, Documentary Funding Mix, 7 Types of Fundraising. We'll be going for about 3 hours today and the same amount of time tomorrow. We'll have fun and we'll learn the different ways of fundraising. My name's Ariana Alexis Anderson, and I'm a filmmaker and a university educator in film production. And today I'm filling in for Emily Smart, who you may have already been in touch with, the filmmaker liaison for Filmmaker Success. At Filmmaker Success, we like to make movies, make money, and make the world a better place. And so today you'll meet Joanne Butcher, a consulting producer with over 100 independent films under her belt. She's got a wealth of experience in fundraising and distribution, and Joanne has a proven track record of facilitating the sale of numerous feature films and participating in the distribution of 22 features. As an expert in fundraising, Joanne has supported her clients through various channels, including major donors, grants, foundations, corporate sponsorships, and over 40 successful crowdfunding campaigns. She's a newly published author with her book Getting Your Film Funded, produced and distributed globally. And this book gives you the tools to make your film a success through Joanne's experience working with filmmakers and the steps she takes with her clients through all of her films. The book is currently available for pre-sale on Amazon and will be available in hard copy January 1st, 2024. Her involvement with organizations such as Brown Girls Doc Mafia, Slam Dance, the Brazilian Film Festival in Miami, and the Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival have made her an integral part of the film community. As a founder of Unstoppable, a disability film festival, and a frequent judge at the Forever Foundation, Joanne has been dedicated to mentoring and developing the careers of young creatives. Joanne's experience extends beyond her fundraising and distribution, and she's directed a first-run cinema and film school in Miami Beach, Florida, where she created the Florida Feature Film Competition. The competition has provided filmmakers with a platform to uplevel their business and marketing packages while competing for a $200,000 prize. With 143 feature films in various stages of development, from script to distribution, Joanne's specialty lies in helping filmmakers raise funds to get their projects made and distributed globally. Her extensive network and expertise in the film industry make her the go-to consultant for independent filmmakers seeking support with their fundraising and distribution. I'm so glad to welcome you guys today, and I'm so excited to introduce Joanne. Joanne?
Hello, hello. Thank you so much, Ariana. You're doing a fantastic job, given this is your first time. So thank you so much. Emily is off on vacation, and we have a very small group. So this is like a VIP master class. And I'll just tell you an interesting thing. So I called I was just telling Ariana, who is a documentary filmmaker, that I was feeling as though my fiction filmmakers were kind of outnumbering my documentary filmmakers. So it's time to do a little focus on documentary filmmakers. But because I called the class Documentary Funding Mix, a lot of filmmakers said, oh no, this isn't for me. I'll wait till you go back to teaching fiction. I don't teach fiction filmmaking. I don't teach documentary filmmaking. I teach raising money, And so what's interesting about the way I see it is that documentary filmmakers know that they have to learn how to raise money. They're under no illusions. Whereas fiction filmmakers often think that they're going to start getting investors, and then they won't have to raise any more money, which I don't think is actually true. But because I think if you're going to stay independent and you're going to make your own projects, you're going to have to raise money for that. If you want to work on somebody else's projects, that's a different thing. But if you want to make your own projects, then you're going to have to raise money, fiction or documentary. And the way that I teach it is that there are very many ways of raising money. And how can we have income coming in from as many of them as possible? That's, to me, that's how it's going to work, as a filmmaker. And I teach 7 different ways of fundraising, but that doesn't mean to say those are the only income streams. Ariana teaches. Other filmmakers work in the industry, working on other people's projects. So, there are more ways of generating income than necessarily the 7 types of fundraising that we're going to get to over these 2 days. But I'm just talking about, straight out and out fundraising. When I work with my clients, we work on the other forms of income as well, building your film production business, or building your income, working in the industry, all of those things. But here we're going to focus on a variety of different ways of raising money. And just so nice to meet you, Felicia. I don't think we've met before. Nice to have you here, Mike. We practically have never met before. So good to see you back, Connor. I hope you're doing well. And
Yes, thank you.
yay, excellent. And nice to see you again, Robert. So I think that I'll just do a bit of an introduction of myself, just to start us out so that you know a little bit about my background. I have been interested deeply in filmmaking since I was a child. I used to have dreams about cowboys and Indians. And in my dreams, I was an Indian and we always won. And at the end of my dreams, it would say, "The end," in big letters. And at some very significant points in my life, I had dreams. I had a dream where Francis Ford Coppola told me that I was supposed to be making films. I had a dream where David Cassidy told me I was supposed to be making films. I just thought they were funny dreams. I didn't really take them terribly seriously, but I first got involved in filmmaking when I first moved to Miami in 1984. And I moved to Miami to get a master's in English at the English department there. And somehow or other, I ended up signing up for a screenwriting course. I'm like, that's English, isn't it? And the other people in my department looked very much down their noses at the fact that I was taking a screenwriting class with this extraordinary teacher called Paul Nagel. And he was a screenwriter and an actor. And he had always, this was at the University of Miami, and he'd always lived in Miami and had never left, even though his career called him to leave. He ended up acting in a Tennessee Williams play, Sweet Bird of Youth, and it was directed by Elia Kazan. And I don't usually tell this story, but it's fun. It was in the 40s, I think 40s, and it was during the blacklist, the Joseph McCarthy blacklist days. So Elia Kazan couldn't direct in Hollywood and all of that stuff. and Tennessee Williams was an outcast anyway. So they were putting on Sweet Bird of Youth for its premiere at a little theater in Coral Gables, Miami. And Paul Nagel told these stories about how Tennessee Williams would be out in the alley behind the theater, sitting on a wooden box, drinking, because by that time he drank all the time. And he would call Paul Nagel out, who had grown up in Miami, which is the South. People don't think of it like that, but it's the South. And he would say, Paul, could you come and read these lines so I hear how they sound in your mouth? And I always remembered that line. So that was my screenwriting teacher. And then I got involved with a group of the usual suspects, a bunch of artists. And we started showing experimental films here at a bookstore in same said Coral Gables. And people really loved, we showed experimental films, you know, shorts, work by Jean-Luc Godard, very avant-garde art with a capital A film. And I started making my own art with a capital A, experimental films as well. And that's very much my background, the experimental art world. And when Books and Books opened their second store on Lincoln Road in Miami Beach, which back then in the 90s was, I always say it's like the cowboy movies with the ghost town and the tumbleweed blowing down the road. You know, that's what Lincoln Road was like back then. If anybody's seen it today, it's not like that today. But back then, you know, nobody was there, and the city of Miami Beach encouraged artists to rent space on Lincoln Road and they used artists to try to attract people to come to this place that was really abandoned and neglected. And so we ended up opening a cinema there. And the first year it was run by somebody whose name I won't remember, because I won't say, because he's still in the film world. And he booked a lot of very cutting edge art with a capital A, experimental movies. And the chairman of the board, Don Chauncey, practically had a heart attack when, after a year, this is important, he found out that Bruce, who had booked all these movies, the way that the film business works is when you show a movie at the theater, you show the movie, let's say you show it for 3 weeks, and you are doing a 50-50 split with the distributor. After the 3 weeks, you're supposed to send 50% of the money to the distributor. And what Don found was that the whole entire year that Bruce had been running the cinema, he had never paid a distributor. And what he had done was to license films from every single different distributor in the country. And after a year, we now owed money to every single distributor in the country and could not get any films. We could no longer get any films because we owed everybody money. So Don had to fire Bruce and move on. And Don was a gay man, and there was one company in the country that Bruce had never rented from. And it's still there today. It's called Frameline, and they specialize in LGBT films. They're based in San Francisco. They have the first LGBT film festival in the country there. And so we started showing gay films, and we were the first place in Miami to do anything culturally for the LGBT community. And we got this absolutely huge fan base of people who had never been served before. So it really was a big lesson for me in working with underserved audiences, and they really became the foundational base of our cinema. And a few years later, we had a newsletter went out, and it had FAQs, and it said, "Why do you show so many gay films?" And it said, "Because some of us are gay." And then it said, "Because some of the absolute best filmmakers out there are gay and making gay films." And it was this real moment of film production where a lot of LGBT filmmakers were coming out and making just incredible work, which we had never seen before. So it was a very exciting moment. This was the 90s. And we showed a lot of foreign films. We showed Jamon Jamon. I remember stayed with us for 6 weeks. And we were a one-screen cinema, and we lied to the distributors and told them we had 100 seats. We actually only had 79. And many years later, Bob Burney was hired by Good Machine to handle distribution of a film that had landed in their laps. It was a film called Happiness, if anyone remembers this film. And it was a narrative fiction film, and it was a story of a pedophile. And the original company that owned it was owned by another company, owned by another company, owned by another company, owned by another company, owned by Disney. And Disney realized that they had some business with this film about pedophiles, and they had to get rid of it. And it ended up in Good Machine's hands. Good Machine's a production company. Ted Hope and James Schamus, very, very, very famous filmmakers by now. And they hired Bob Burney to distribute this movie. Well, we booked the movie not knowing that Bob Burney had a rule where he went and visited every cinema that he had a film in. So I get a phone call, and this guy, Bob Burney, is coming from the distributor to meet us. And it was terrifying to me because I knew he was going to find out we only had 79 seats and we had been lying all along. So Bob Burney came down, and I met him outside somewhere for coffee. And I really tried so hard to not let him into the cinema. But eventually he came into the cinema, and he didn't give us away. But over the years, Bob Burney has become one of the legends in film distribution. He went on to distribute My Big Fat Greek Wedding. He's known for The Passion of Christ. Some films that have just legendary stories about distribution in them. So anyway, Bob didn't give us away. And we started a film school. And so I ran that as well. And we taught filmmakers filmmaking essentials, filmmaking basics. And I taught script writing. And one day I thought, what happens to filmmakers who are a bit more advanced? When we're offering for people to start, for people to learn, what happens to filmmakers when they're further along? So I put together a focus group of people, about 10 people who'd already made one feature film. And I said, what is it that you need help with? And everybody was the same: money. It's about money. It's about money. Didn't matter if they were documentary filmmakers, if they were fiction filmmakers, everybody said the same thing. We need money. And so by then I had been raising money to run the organization. It was a $500,000 a year organization. And I learned fundraising on the job. Most professional fundraisers, that's how they learn fundraising. They learn on the job. And I would just figure things out. Like I realized that we had a database of about, 100 members. We had members of the cinema and members of the film school. And so we needed some money one time. So I go through the database and I called everybody. And one of the people on the list, I said, "You're not a filmmaker. Why are you a member of the film school?" It was called the Alliance Film and Video Co-op, later IFP Miami. And he said, "Well, Joanne, I'm a big fan of the cinema, and to become a member of the cinema is $40, and to become a member of the film school is $60. So I gave $60 because that was all you asked for." I think that was my first lesson in fundraising, that we had raving fans but we were only giving them the opportunity to give $40 or $60. And that particular person ended up giving us a $35,000 gift. And as I was working on that with him, he would ask for the current budget for the cinema, then the current budget for the film school, then last year's budget for the cinema, last year's budget for the film school, next year's budget for the cinema, next year's budget for the film school. I never actually met with him in person, but I sent him budget after budget after budget after budget. He wanted to make sure that we were doing properly with our money. And as I said, he ended up giving us $35,000. So that was a big achievement after $60. And around the same time, I got my second donor, and he said he wanted to give us, I think it was $10,000. And he wanted to come and have lunch with us. So he ordered a bunch of pizzas, and we invited all the staff, and he showed up in a t-shirt and shorts, and we all ate pizza. And he told me that the reason he did that was because he only gave to organizations where there were nice people. So what happened to me with my first two donors was I learned that every single donor is completely unique. And it's my job to find out what the donor is interested in. One was interested in budgets, one was interested in finding out if we were nice people. Entirely different worldviews or why they gave. And we'll get to this later when we're looking at different types of fundraising, that as the person raising the money, it's our job to find out what that funder is looking for, whether it's an individual, whether it's a corporate sponsor, whether it's a foundation. It's our job to find out what they're looking for. We may have a film that we want to get funded, and it's the same film, but each type of fundraising that we do, it's going to be different in the way that we approach them, because they are interested in different things, and that's a key piece. So as I said, I was raising about $500,000 a year, and all the filmmakers told me they needed money. And so I started back then teaching how to raise money. And I've been doing that ever since. Now, after that, I started a film competition. It was a feature film competition, and the prize, as we read in my bio, was $200,000, $25,000 cash, and $175,000 in goods and services. And because of that process, I ended up leaving the organization. It's too long a story. I don't want to get into it, but it was super painful because that was my baby. And I decided, that's it. I'm done with film. I'm out. I'm going to do something else. I'm going to get a real job. And I ended up moving to San Francisco to raise money for the YMCA. And we were building a new YMCA, and my job was to raise millions of dollars. And for the capital campaign is when you're building a building. And then I also was in charge of grants and individual donors and corporate sponsors and all of that. I also added planned giving when I was there. And the first year I was there, my goal in grants was $250,000. I raised 251, and I was like, shoo, I did it. I made it. And then my boss said, well, nobody ever raised 200,000 before. And I was like, oh, okay. And the second year I raised $749,000. And then I left that organization. I went to Youth Radio. I raised $2 million in about 5 months, sitting by myself and just writing grants. I raised about $1 million from the Kresge Foundation, still the foundation I admire the most. And then I got fired. I would say this, then I got fired. And still to this day, I have a friend who is a fundraiser, and he offered to have a weekly kind of coaching call with me to find out why I was running into so much difficulty in my jobs. because he thought I was doing something wrong. And I think that really what I was doing wrong is I was raising too much money. And it frightened the executive directors because I was scary. And I don't feel like I'm a scary person, but what I've noticed is that money, I like to say we all have money shit. And I think that I was stirring up people's money shit is what was going on. But the executive director who let me go actually apologized a year or two later when they got the final million and they realized that I had raised $2 million in 5 months sitting by myself in a little office by myself. So, and it was interesting because I met people actually later on who told me that there were various people around San Francisco claiming that they had raised that money. I was like, oh, that's very interesting. I've run into that since as well. So, but anyway, I have after that, I did a lot of capital campaigns and have raised many millions of dollars. And then some of you know this, some of you don't about me, but I became sick and I became too sick to work. And I spent 7 years in bed. The manifestation was migraines and chronic fatigue, but it was devastating and I lost everything and had to really face, I don't know, homelessness. I thought I would be on the street. I mean, I didn't have any family support and I'd moved to San Francisco as a single woman. So I didn't have any partner or anything like that. And I had no life at all. And every now and then I would hear a voice that would say I was supposed to work with filmmakers. And I was like, I don't think so. I already tried that. I did that. It didn't work, And so, God, tell me what to do. Well, you're supposed to work with filmmakers. Well, not that, that went on for 7 years until finally a friend of mine who was a coach wanted to try out a technique on me. So he said, we're going to meet for 5 hours. And we had this big board and he had all these Post-it notes up and arrows and things everywhere. And at the end of the day, he said, well, I think we can draw the conclusion from this that you're supposed to work with filmmakers. 5 hours of work. And that's what he said to me. So he was leaving and, I was waving goodbye at the front door and I said, thank you so much, Peter. This was amazing. And of course, I won't be doing that. That's what I said to him. So I'm very clear that I had a calling and I would not follow it. Would not, refuse to follow it. And now I find that a lot of my clients are people who've had similar struggles where they know they have a calling, they know they're supposed to be making films, and it is damn hard to make films. And they have stopped along the way or but I finally was able to hear the voice. And actually I heard it because I found some coaches. I found some business coaches. And I said, I keep thinking I'm supposed to work with filmmakers. And they said, really? Sounds great. And I said, oh, really? I thought it was crazy. And they said, no, I think that sounds great. That's what you want to do. And that's how I started. And I was still really ill when I started. And I decided, if I can only work for 2 hours a week, I'd rather spend my 2 hours working with filmmakers. They're my favorite people. And so that's how I got into coaching. And that was about 6 or 7 years ago. And since then, my health is restored. I work full time. And as you heard earlier, I have about 100 and something clients, and they have about, in my last count, I have to redo it, it'll be higher now, but I have 143 mostly feature films and a few series in various stages of development. 21 are in distribution. The last one that went into distribution is a documentary, and that is a film about Greenwood, which is the neighborhood in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where the massacre happened 101 years ago. She was actually making the film on the 100th anniversary. And she just signed a contract with Freestyle Entertainment, which I'm super excited about. Does anybody know Freestyle Entertainment? Yeah, Mike, what do you know about Freestyle Entertainment?
Oh wow. So they're a service distribution, like you hire them to distribute your film. The last I was communicating with them, boy, maybe a decade ago. So they can take your film out.
Where are you based, Mike?
I'm in upstate New York,
Oh, okay. The reason I asked is
but
because
Freestyle is on the West Coast, I think.
in the West Coast, yes, because
Yes.
I first knew them several years ago. I met them at the Napa Valley Film Festival, and they were originally founded in San Francisco, LA kind of thing, three partners, and they were very close. And then one of them died. And by the time I met them, she had already died. And they were, you know, a small distribution company. They also were the ones who distributed, gosh, what's that film called? It was about a $5 million movie about wine and the wine competition. I'm not going to remember what it's called. Bottle Shock. Fabulous film, still making money today. And but this is the cool thing about Freestyle Entertainment. So about 5, 6, 7 years ago, Byron Allen acquired Freestyle Entertainment. Now, Byron Allen is a huge, huge hero of mine. And Byron Allen is a TV guy, totally in television, has been, you know, for years. And he bought Freestyle Media because he said he wanted to have some involvement in film. So he acquired Freestyle Entertainment, and they also have a particular, he's African American, if you don't know him, and they have an interest in African American films. So this documentary is going out with Freestyle Entertainment, and I'm just super excited because I now have a client who's connected to Byron Allen. So that was the number 21 film, and that's gone into distribution. And I actually, let me put a link here. We just made a super cool page. Do you have it with all my films? Do you have that by any chance? I got it. Ariana Anderson is a film professor and a client of mine, and she's helping us out today because Emily is away. And here's a list of my projects, so you can see those. The one I'm telling you about is on there. It's called The History of Greenwood. So I work with documentary filmmakers. I work with fiction filmmakers. Every filmmaker needs to raise money, and the question is, where is that money going to come from? You know, so we are going to get into a little bit of planning your fundraising strategy, your strategic fundraising plan. I used to be a consultant, and that would be something that we would do, would be to work on an annual strategic fundraising plan. And we're going to do that over these 2 days. We're going to create your strategic fundraising plan for 2024 and figure out how to think about raising the money for your films. I know not everybody here is a documentary filmmaker, because frankly, it's the same. It's the same thing. There's always money available for you and your filmmaking, whether you're making documentary films or you're making fiction films. And once you have this concept of these different types of fundraising, you can always be tapping into those income sources. So that's what we're going to get into. And we're going to start with, I'm going to have you all introduce yourselves. We're such a small group, and so I think it'll be really fun. We're going to just introduce yourselves, and tell us a little bit about who you are as a filmmaker and what projects you're going to be raising money for. Let's start with, I'm going to go in order that I'm seeing. So let's start with Mike.
Okay, I was just communicating with someone. So projects and what we're looking to raise money for. Is
Yes.
that right? Okay, so there are two projects that kind of come front to mind. I actually have numerous documentaries in various stages of development, many of them nearing post-production. But one which I am in production right now and post is called Project Unfurl, projectunfurl.com. My company name is Videos for Change at videosforchange.com, creating customized communications designed to impact audiences around the globe. I set that up I started in 1995. And I remember the Todd Solondz movie, Happiness, when it came out. Just to throw out a couple of things, in 1996, I was connected to John Pearson, Spike, Mike, Slackers, and Dykes. And I started a salon network for filmmakers through Upstate, we call it Upstate Independence. It was part of the AIVF, or Association of Independent Film, that put out a magazine called The Independent. So I've been in the industry for a while, yet my number one problem is raising money to complete films. Some have business plans, some don't. But Project Unfurl is the story of the smallest Division I basketball program ever to make it to the Final Four, NCAA Final Four. The school is St. Bonaventure, the home of Bob Lanier, who became the NBA #1 draft pick. And we've never gone back. It happens to be my school, my college. And so it's about this arc of this little school and what is it going to survive in college athletics today.
Right.
The other documentary.
I'm going to actually ask you to stick with one.
Okay.
First time I ever taught a class, I had a couple of friends there, and I said, I'm going to ask you to stick with one. And I heard this funny sound next to me, and I look, and my friend is there. He's like, ooh, he's like this. Ooh, ooh. Like, what? And he said, you want me to just talk about one film? And I said, okay, it's just for 10 minutes. Okay, it's just for 10 minutes.
Yep.
You know, I'm going to ask you to hold on one sec. I forgot to bring my coffee over to the table.
Mhm.
I can't teach without my coffee. Okay, and let's go to Felicia. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Felicia Barlow-Clar. I live in Annapolis, right outside Washington, D.C. I have my master's in producing film and video, and I've worked on a lot of other people's projects, but now I have my own passion project that I'm working on, a documentary about my step-grandfather, who was considered the leader of the civil rights movement prior to Martin Luther King. He is the person that set up all of the like Briggs versus Elliott, the campaigns and everything that led to Brown versus the Board of Education. So I've been going to the Library of Congress and doing a lot of research just to make sure that all the family folklore was accurate, and it is.
Wow. And what's his name?
Reverend James Hinton.
Kenton, K-E-N?
Hinton.
Hinton. Okay, Hinton. Okay.
Somebody
Wow.
miraculously, like the way the world works in these miraculous ways, somebody set up a Wikipedia page for him a few months ago. With like, we had that on our list of things to do, and done. So he's very well known in South Carolina, but he's not known anywhere else. So,
you know, Felicia, lovely to meet you. I think you're the first person I've ever heard say step-grandfather, because I had a step-grandfather. And I never hear people say that. So that's interesting.
yeah, it's funny. I never thought of it, but I actually had two.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, welcome. Connor, So good to see you after all this time. So,
Yes. Yeah, so I've been a professional camera assistant for 17 years. That burnt me out, decided to retire, and I said, yeah, I can produce films. I've been in the business. I know how to do that. Kind of went through the school of hard knocks of learning how to doing package and developing. Finally connected up with a fantastic company. Currently have one feature film, just about ready to get the production budget funded of $9 million. Then have another feature film that's about to go into development as well. Originally came to Joanne and kind of sparked my interest. Like, yeah, I do have an idea for a documentary, and I'd like to learn how to do a different way of funding it, because I kind of knew the traditional route of, raising debt or capital, which was pretty easy once I learned how to do it. I'd never really gotten into, finding a good way of doing grants and other alternative funding. So figured, yeah, I have this idea for a documentary, which is it's this documentary called Biohacked. It's about an anti-aging expert who goes on a scientific discovery to explore new quantum technologies for cellular rejuvenation and biohacking treatment techniques. So it's that's the documentary documenting this quantum healing and biohacking techniques. So that's my documentary.
fantastic. I learned so much from my clients. I think it's one of the most exciting things to me about my work, because I get to hear about Reverend Hinton, learn about Reverend Hinton, learn about this school that goes to now I get to learn about biohacks. I personally am very into all of that. And it's great. This is exactly what we're supposed to be doing, making documentary films, is providing education / entertainment about all these interesting topics. So great, Connor. Good to see you, or not see you.
Oh yeah, Zara, my camera's not working, but I look a lot like in my picture.
Jamila, lovely to meet you. We haven't met before, have we? You're muted, Jamila.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Nice to meet everyone. My name is Jamila Alston. I'm from New York City, the Bronx. And I'm a cinematographer. I've been working on films and other event productions. And I've had my company since the early 2000s. So I've been doing this for a while. During the pandemic, I went back to school. I'm in my last semester of getting my MFA in cinematography and directing.
Wow.
So so a lot's been going on, and I'm really excited. In 2000, my documentary is about a Cuban percussionist, and my working title right now is Pedrito Martinez, the son of Cuba, at the Festival Rubazo. So in 2018, I went to Cuba, and we were accompanying this percussionist who's based in the United States. That it was like his homecoming. He hadn't been back to Cuba for a while, and he was the featured artist for the Rubazo Festival. And so not only was he going to play individually, but he was playing with all these other rumba bands that had come from throughout Cuba. And so when I went, I brought my camera. I had no idea exactly what I was going to see, and I just immersed myself into the experience. Well, I ended up shooting for 4 days, 17 bands. And so I had all this incredible footage, and then it was like, okay, now what do I do? And so part of my process that I went through with school was now trying to figure out exactly what my story was going to be, because I've had all the performance. Now I'm working on, what's the story, what's the concept, what is it that I'm trying to tell? And so I'm at the point of, so what I'm trying to do, the credible things about Pedrito is not only is he this wonderful percussionist, he's also a Santeria priest. And so I say that he's unapologetically Cuban and unapologetically African. And so Rumba is the musical form that is just the closest to Africa that came with the enslaved. And so what I'm trying to show in this documentary, not only who he is as this artist who's becoming to getting internationally renowned status, but also that what he transmits in his art and how he educates his musical audience through his art, and the connection to people of color throughout the world through his music. So I've written most of the concept up. I'm getting ready to have, he knows me because I've been following him for since 2017. I'm a photographer. So we're getting ready to sit down and talk about the idea. And so I'm at the stage where in order to do the interviews, to start doing the work, now I have to find somebody.
Find somebody.
Find some money.
Oh, find some money. I thought you said find somebody. I'm like, find somebody?
In order to now do the work that I need to do.
Yeah, find some money. Find
And
some
I,
money.
like this year, I've filmed him several times, so I have current performance footage. But now I need to interview him. A lot of people. I need to do the interviewing. Doing now the continuation of the production work.
Do you have, are you part Cuban or anything like that?
No, I'm African American. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know anything about Cuban music until I moved to Miami many years ago. And I'll never forget that the first time that I ever heard a Cuban band, and now I'm not going to remember who it was, but anyway, it was somebody super famous. And one of my colleagues was there. I used to work for Miami-Dade Community College Cultural Affairs Department, and we brought this band, and it was a huge band, and one of my colleagues who was born in America, but Cuban, Miami Cuban, was dancing, and I love to dance, and I couldn't hear, the whole polyrhythmic structure of the music. I couldn't hear it. Now it feels like home to me. And I'm half Trinidadian, so it's just a hop, skip, and a jump. But the rhythms of Cuban music, and so to have a story of a percussionist and to get the roots, I have another client who's a Venezuelan traditional music expert, and she's making a documentary about traditional Venezuelan music and focusing on 4 different instruments. But yeah, I think that African history, that line from Africa and then to me, this whole thing about the Cuban music and that polyrhythmic.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. It's so sophisticated. It's amazing.
And then the thing is that, see, my company is called Pan-African Cultural Communication. So most of my work has been with African artists, Pan-African artists. So I'm totally have been on this journey in terms of looking at the connections between Africa and where we ended up, and then I'm also an educator, so trying to use the arts to kind of educate, to show that we're all interconnected. And so through my interest in Pedrito, especially with him as not only a percussionist, but as a Santeria Yoruba priest. That's as close as you could get to Africa. So everything he emits, it's all this positivity and this immersion. And so that's my goal is to, and then wherever he doesn't change who he is. You see, a lot of times we come to this country, we have to modify who we are. And so what I want to show what I'm trying to do differently is not just focus on him here, but show how coming back to Cuba was like this really a special moment and a special historical moment, because he could just be himself. He didn't have to pretend for his American audience.
Okay,
And
Jimmy,
that's when you got to see him.
I'm just going to ask you a technical question. Do you have a contract for story rights?
That's where him and I are getting ready to sit down. So like this semester of school was writing the whole concept. My professor was working with me. My professor is Harry Machiavellis, who did the documentary on what is the Caucus movie. Okay. And
But
so
I just want to say,
Mhm.
you need to get the story rights.
Right.
That's it. That's all I want to say. You have to get the story rights.
Okay.
Yeah, great. Lovely to meet you, Jamila. Robert, can you talk? I know you said you were going to the airport, so maybe you can't speak right now. I guess we're going to come back to Robert. Okay, so we are going to start working on our 2024 fundraising goals. So I'm going to put a link in the chat.
Mhm.
What I want you to do is to now this should work. We tested it beforehand, right, Ariana? This should work. So what I want you to do is open this spreadsheet and make yourself a copy. So you're going to open the spreadsheet. It's in the chat. You're going to make yourself a copy, and you're going to, so you go under File and go down a little bit, and it says make a copy. And you're going to make a copy, and you're going to rename it something with your own name in it. This is the best way I've found to organize things. So call it, like if it's Connor, you know, it's going to be Connor's fundraising targets 2024 to 2025. Is everybody able first to open the document? Yep. Okay, good. That part worked. Then go down under File. It says make a copy. And make a copy and put your name on it. So it becomes your.
This is the one that says Film Grants Calendar. Because I only,
You know
it's
what?
allowing me to.
I gave you the wrong one. I'm sorry. You are right. That's the wrong one. I'm going to delete that. I'm so
only
sorry.
saying now.
I'm
Yes.
so sorry. I can't get into that kind of depth. All right. Sorry. Let me get you the right one.
Okay.
This is the right one. This is the one that you should be able to.
Joanne, I just dropped the link that you.
Oh, thank you. Please. Yeah, I did the wrong one. I should have asked you in the first place.
So I hope that this is the correct document. And again, you're going to go to File and make a copy. Let me know if you have any trouble.
Thank you for that, Jamila, because
It says we need access, so we'll write a message, request access.
oh, really? So I thought we weren't going to have to ask for access, but we are. Okay, fine. Okay, Mike, you should have access. Connor, you should have access. I guess, Ariana, our test didn't work because you were all, I don't know why our test didn't work, but
I think it's because I might have already been given access by Emily.
Because I need access as well, request access.
Okay, I see it. I'm in, so it's working.
It's just as well we're a small group because I wouldn't normally try anything this fancy. Felicia, how are you doing?
You have the document?
Oh, Jamila, I got you.
Got it? Okay.
Okay.
Should be able to get in now.
Can you confirm that you have the document and Robert too?
What are you seeing, Felicia?
It's a comprehensive spreadsheet with a lot of tabs.
No, I sent you the wrong one. So go to the, if you wouldn't mind throwing that away, there's some confidential information on it. I really did share the wrong thing.
So
So
which,
go to the chat. There's another spreadsheet.
Okay, so now I got it.
Fundraising is a confidential practice, and so if you wouldn't mind throwing that first one away, I really appreciate it because it was a mistake.
I don't see another link though. I see the one Ariana sent.
Yes, that one.
Oh, that's the one I'm,
Oh, mine only has one tab though.
oh, well, so let me try again.
Yeah, you've still got the first one open, I think.
Okay, let me. All right, it said I had to request access to that one too.
Okay, there we go. Got you. And so I think I have everybody.
Okay, I'm trying to into there. Oh, Lord.
Except because he's. Oh, you know what, Ariana, this is the part where I think they didn't need access. I just wanted them to make a copy, right? I was supposed to give the instruction to make a copy, not to request access. Okay, can you all now make your own copy? Because I want you to do work in your own copy. And what will happen is I'll see you all your little pictures disappear from my document. Okay, Mike just left. Connor is still here. Victoria's still here. So you're going to go to, can you show them? Yep. Thanks, Ariana. There you go. That's right, Ariana. I was supposed to not give access. I was supposed to say, make a copy, because when you make a copy, then it becomes, you can edit it. I forgot. We practiced this beforehand and we got it right. Like they always say, if you get it right in rehearsal, it'll be wrong on the day. That's right. Make a copy.
Still want to make a copy.
And said I normally wouldn't try this because simple as it is. I only know about 5 things to do on a Google spreadsheet, but this is one of them. So
Make a copy. Okay.
got it. All right. Felicia, did you make a copy?
Yeah, I
Mike
got
made a copy. Connor made a copy, I hope. Oh, well, that was a lot. Okay.
As long as everybody has their own copy of the worksheet, I think we'll be ready to move forward.
Yes, yes.
If you have any problems, you can send me a direct message and I'll help.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Ariana. All right. Years ago, it took me months sometimes to teach people how to use Google spreadsheets. Over time, people have become more and more accustomed, but part of my history is I worked for YouTube for a while. I didn't say that in my intro, but it was my favorite job other than working for myself because I was a content creator for YouTube. But what I learned was that, we would have teams. I was working with a team in England. We had engineers. We had me as the content curator. We had all these different people working on spreadsheets that had thousands and thousands and thousands of tabs and thousands of lines of information. And in YouTube, the offices don't have paper in them. Everything is on Google Drives, Google Spreadsheets, Google Docs. And so now I teach all my clients we keep everything in one place. And I figure if YouTube and Google can do it, so can we. So this is just a start. This is just one piece. So my goal is that we're going to get to the first of the 7 types of fundraising by the end of today. But if we don't, it's fine. We'll do all 7 tomorrow, but I'd like to get to the first. But before we do that, we're going to work on your own copy. And I think I'm going to share my screen and show you what I'm doing on mine. So the way that I think about fundraising is that we're always going to start with a set of goals, okay? So I would like for you all told us about one project. In each case, it was a documentary. Shout out the number, the total that you want to raise to make this documentary. And if you don't know the number, make something up. Felicia, what's your number?
I was thinking 300,000.
Okay, Jamila?
Oh, Lord.
Jamila, what's your number?
I guess would be about the same, 300,000.
1,000. Okay, Mike?
I'm gonna raise that to 350.
350. Okay, Connor?
250 to 500. I don't know. I haven't done a budget yet.
It doesn't matter. All right, I'm going to pick 300 for you
Okay.
because I happen to have 300 on my page here.
Yeah, works out.
All right. So actually, this should say 2024. I just updated this to 2024. All right. So we're looking at our fundraising targets for 2024 to 25. All right. And you'll see as we go through this, I love to do what I call back of the envelope numbers. I'm terrible at math, terrible. And I've had to do so many budgets in my life and they're so finicky and all of that. But I also like to just do, when it's sort of about visioning, I like to just do ballpark numbers. So, but we can do that if we settle on a number. I don't want you to be in this kind of 200 to 500. No, let's just pick a number. It can change, but for now, that's what's going to happen. So we've got our total. Most of us were about 300,000. Mike was at 350. Fine. So I'm going to take out investors because it's rare for documentaries to get investors. Now, having said that, I have a client who he just texted me. He just arrived in Miami. He's making a documentary about sea moss, which is a form of seaweed and he's the #1 sea moss distributor in the US. And he's making a film, never did anything with film before, doesn't know anything about filmmaking. And he came down to meet with me. I've attached a very experienced producer to his film. So we're all going to meet tomorrow night. And then he's going up to meet his investors. So he already knew an investor. And what's really interesting is that as we were working together, I finally, was teaching about distribution and things like that. And I finally revealed to him, that there's a certain niche of documentary films that are about health and wellness. And they are super, super popular. And so his film is going to be about the amazing properties of sea moss and what it can do for you and the energy it gives you and all that. People are going to really love that. So he's going to get investors, but it's rare in the film world. Doesn't mean to say you can't do it. It's rare. I'm just going to mute you, Jamila. Okay, so now we're going to get into all the different types of fundraising eventually, but just for now, let's just make up some numbers. So this one, small donors, that is crowdfunding. And so nowadays, the way that filmmakers tend to get small donors is through crowdfunding. Who here is willing to do a crowdfunding campaign? Jamila, you know, or are you not sure? Yes, you are. Okay. Connor, I can't see you. So when I work with my clients and we do a crowdfunding campaign, I start my feature filmmakers at $20,000. We've had people raise significantly more than that in a crowdfunding campaign. But the methodology I teach is a very kind of low-key approach. Most filmmakers who have tried a crowdfunding campaign before they meet me will use words like brutal, horrifying, these really intense words, and they're often very unsuccessful. But that's not the way that we do it when people work with me. But I start even people who are making their first film at 20,000. I've had people raise 38,000, 51,000, 67,000. I tend to not go for more than that. There are people out there who run campaigns for people, and you hire them and they take a percentage and they charge you money and all of that. Great. But that's not how I do it. I do it as a sort of low-key, in a low-key way, and it's part of a fundraising mix of things. But it's great to get the momentum going, So that's what this small donors is here. What we'll be getting into later is that the number one way really to be raising money for movies is individual donors, but major donors. And so for a $300,000 film, a major donor would be $5,000, $10,000. I have a couple of clients who regularly get $25,000 donations. Mark, oh, he's supposed to be in class. I don't know where he is. He's supposed to be here. But he has $25,000 donors. And then my client, Thomas Allen Harris, also regularly has $20,000 donors. So individual donors are really the highest number that we're probably going to get for donations. And so a goal I might put here might be $100,000. Again, back of the envelope idea. It depends on the nature of your film, what you're talking about. Like Mike has a film that's about a school, maybe in his case, the crowdfunding campaign is a higher number. Maybe it's 40,000, right? Get the whole, whoops, not 400.
Joanne, could I jump in?
Sure.
I started a campaign for 50,000 and it's stuck at 38.
Oh, 38 is excellent though. Excellent.
Part of that is what I've donated to it. So full disclosure, it's been going on it's been dragging on. There's so many other competing fundraising initiatives for the school that I've been moved to the kids table. I'm behind everything. And yeah, and I don't want to take up too much time, but I am interviewing the key guy this Saturday who works for ESPN and he's a Bonnet grad from the school. We call it Bonus. And I'll just plant this last seed. I'm getting ahead of you, but I'm also in communication with Adidas, which is the partner of our school. So I'll be eager at some point to talk with or to hear you talk about sponsorship.
Yes, so 38,000 is very good. And to me, the only thing that I would have changed is I probably wouldn't have started you at 50. That's all. It's more powerful let's say you had started at 30, or at 40 to use that to get to 50, then start at 50. It's just that psychologically people see, oh, this, whatever, but so I tend to start with a lower number that's still a challenge, but then try and beat it. So 40,000 for most people would be a lot, but but you can see what I'm saying, like Mike has this school thing, it's a whole thing, but 20,000 is something. So now, and I like to leverage my crowdfunding campaigns to identify major donors and go there. So as you see here at the bottom, we have 200,000, so we're still short, right? So what are we going to do? So grants, now I put 50,000 here. That's pretty high to be able to get that. And what this means here is that I'm suggesting that in order to get $50,000, you may have to ask for, let's call it $300,000 worth of grants, if that makes sense. You're going to apply for 50 here, 50 there, 50 here, 50 there. And so in order to get 50, you're going to have to apply for a much bigger number than that. Now, grants, and we'll get into more detail with this. Any filmmaker, fiction filmmaker, documentary filmmaker, has access to, in their local area, some kind of arts grants. Felicia, where did you say you were based?
In Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C. Okay, so in Washington, D.C., there are arts grants. They're not called film grants necessarily. They're called arts grants. And there'll be Washington, D.C., the city, or I guess that's the state as well, right? Excuse me, I'm not American, it's the state as well, right? So my first grant I ever received was a $5,000 grant from the state of Florida. And it was an artist grant. It was a fellowship. A fellowship means you spend the money on whatever you want. You can spend it on rent if you want. But a fellowship is money that's designed to help an artist just keep going. You know, you can spend it on your art if you want. But most filmmakers miss the fact that there's always local money for arts, always. And if it's $5,000, $10,000, you know, in the face of $300,000, it doesn't sound like much, but every grant you get is like a big stamp of approval that you can use to leverage to get more individual donations. So I always want everybody to look locally. So what is there in DC for artists?
I have a question about that.
Mhm.
Are those grants typically supporting the filmmaker, or are they, because like my subject is very prominent in South Carolina, so should I also look in South Carolina, or should I?
You probably won't be able to get grants in South Carolina unless you have a producer who can apply in South Carolina. Because most grants are going to be project-based. So if you had a South Carolina producer, definitely they could apply there. But usually it's based on the artist and where you reside, rather than where the film is. But there's usually ways that you can make that work. But that's a great question. So 50,000 may be too high for grants, but for now, let's leave that there. Okay, foundations. So foundations are entities that wealthy individuals or even corporations put money into, and then they have a mandate for where they're going to put their money. So you might find a foundation that funds education, homeless advocacy, and cancer research, right? So every foundation has, they call it their portfolio, and they decide what they give money to. And when you are working in the foundation world, again, it's your job to know what is this foundation's mandate. So for Connor's film, there's going to have different foundations that are interested in health, healthy aging, science, you know, medical, alternative medicine, all these kinds of themes that various foundations support. That's a very different set of foundations than the one that Jamila is going to be going for, which is about music international music, Cuban. I had a client one time, she was making a documentary about a Haitian artist, and she's from Philadelphia. Well, I live in Miami, and so there's a large Haitian population here in Miami. So one day I said to her, have you ever heard of the, now I can't even remember the name, but the Green Foundation? They support Haitian art. And she wrote to them and got $25,000. You know, so foundations, in fact, my mentor, Mario Warshawski, I brought him to Miami many, many years ago, a couple of times. And one time he said the best way to raise money was individual donors. And the other time he said the best way to raise money was foundations. So it could be that you want to be looking at foundations for even $100,000. Okay. Now so corporate sponsors, great question, Mike. Corporate sponsors are very, very special. So every single type of funding, and again, we're going to get into this more, but every type of funding is different. So if you go to an individual, like I told you, my first two donors were so different. One wanted to make sure that my books were correct. The other one wanted to make sure we were nice people, right? So they already had their mandates. You know, they already had their portfolio. That's what they were looking for. One was looking for a very well-managed organization. The other one was looking for nice people, you know? So it was so funny because he was a huge ballet fan, and we were pretty much next door neighbors to the Miami City Ballet, and he wouldn't give them any money because he said they were not nice people. So that was how he decided his funding at the time. But corporate sponsors are not there to grow, to support the community. Corporate sponsors are in the business of getting eyeballs to their products and services. So corporate sponsors you have to approach corporate sponsors in a very, very different way. And you need to be able to show them how many people you're going to be able to get in front of with your project. And for example, one time I was working for a senior center, and we were involved in a day-long event that was a race, you know, and it was like a 5K, and it was in a small town, and everybody in the town would be involved. And so we could get corporate sponsors who would be interested, because there would be 5,000 people who were in the race, and then there'd be, you know, 30,000 people watching, that kind of thing. And that was a small event obviously by, for example, compared to the Olympics, for example, you know, how many billions of people watch the Olympics, you know? So corporate sponsors are always interested in eyeballs, and it's very hard for especially a first-time filmmaker who doesn't already have distribution to get a corporate sponsor. But you can get corporate sponsorship in cash, but you can also get product that can be very, very useful. And Mark isn't here yet, but so my client, Mark Gordon, when I first met him, I met him through friends, and we were talking, and he was very, very depressed because he just lost this fabulous production contract that he was working for this nonprofit. And in the conversation, I found out that in 3 months, he was going to be premiering a documentary on PBS. In PBS New Mexico, so in the state of New Mexico. And PBS was going to be doing 2 screenings of the movie, where they were going to pay all the expenses of the theater and that kind of thing, publicity, whatever. And Mark was going to get the proceeds. I've never heard of this before or since, by the way. So PBS New Mexico was behind, you know, promoting this film, which is about New Mexico. It's called Awakening in Taos. And it's about this character, Mabel Lujan Dodge, who moved she was a very wealthy woman. She moved from from New York to New Mexico at the end of the 19th century. And she ended up marrying a Native American medicine carrier. Already, this story is like just incredible, that this wealthy white woman would marry this Native American. Anyway, that's what happened. And they started an artist colony, and every single super famous artist of the 20th century came there. And if you know Georgia O'Keeffe's paintings with the beautiful desert flowers, she painted them there. She painted them at that arts colony. And so in the documentary about Mabel Dodge Lujan, this arts colony, which is now a hotel, features very, very prominently. Anyway, so I met Mark, and I'd say he was all depressed. And I said, well, what about this PBS screening you've got coming up? I mean, this is a big deal, And he's like, yeah, I know, And I said, and by the way, have you sold your 2 spots? And he said, what 2 spots? And I said, well, when you get a film on PBS, you can sell your spots. It could be to corporate sponsors, it could be to individuals, it could be to a foundation. And he'd never heard of this before. And he literally hung up the phone with me, called the hotel, and got a $25,000 donation. And they are credited on the film, right? And so that is, if you have a film that is a PBS film, you're in a very different position, because PBS has a massive audience, millions and millions of people. It is the most trusted government agency, and the viewers have a very high level of discretionary income. So your 2 spots, if you're taking your film to PBS, are very valuable to corporations. So I'm going to put 50,000 back in there. And I think I'm gonna, what should I go for? I'm going to take out 20 here. So these are my back of the envelope and your back of the envelope numbers. And depending on the film, depending on where you are in your career, these numbers are going to change, right? I worked for an organization called Youth Radio, and we taught young people how to become broadcast journalists. And when I came to the organization, they were a $2.2 million organization, and every penny came from foundations, every penny. And this is one of the problems that I saw in my nonprofit life, was that nonprofits would get really good at one kind of fundraising or 2 kinds of fundraising and leave all the other money on the table. And now I see it with filmmakers. I was hired a few years ago by Brown Girls Doc Mafia to consult with 5 filmmakers, 5 documentary filmmakers who had already raised about $100,000. And in every case, it was 1 grant. They had tended to get 1 grant for $100,000. And then they got stuck and they couldn't get any more grants, and the film was stalled and nothing was happening. And I said to the first one, I said, well, what about individual donors? And they were like, well, what do you mean individual donors? I was like, oh, and not one of them. I think one had raised $1,000 from an individual donor. They had not raised money from foundations, from individuals. And so what I've learned over the years is documentary filmmakers think the only way to raise money is write grants, and beginner fiction filmmakers think the only way to raise money is through crowdfunding, right? But you can see that there are many more ways of raising money. And if you can get just that concept into your minds from this class, we're good. There are many ways of raising money. and you're more likely to get some here and some there and some here and some there. That's why I always call it the funding mix. You're probably not going to get $300,000 from one place. It's just not likely. So now we have our total here is $3,000. And if I were going to do a crowdfunding campaign to get 20,000, I'd probably ask for 20,000. If you ask for too high a number, you just kill your campaign. Somebody might be knocking on my door. Hold on one second. Hello.
May I have the location, please? May I have the location, please? We are testing the fire and
Oh,
then we are testing.
unbelievable. Do you hear that?
We don't hear it specifically what's
No.
being. It was just.
They're testing the fire alarm system.
Oh,
So
okay. Why don't you go?
I've only been in this apartment for a month, and today Ariana and I got on, and in about 1 minute, this construction noise started. It's on the balcony next door to me. It's been the whole time construction, and now they're testing the alarms. I'm like, wow, okay. So this is our fundraising target column, and the next column is another set of targets, which is we're going to have to ask for more than we actually receive. So I at one point when I was working for the YMCA, my record was getting 1 grant for every 2 that I wrote. That's unusual. I have a superpower called fundraising. You know, that's unusual. So it may mean you have to ask for 300,000 to get 100,000, maybe more. So in the amount that you're going to ask for, it's going to be a lot higher than the amount that you get. And you just have to know that to start. It's very helpful to know that in the beginning. And the work of fundraising is to reduce the amount of work and increase the number of requests. So this number of requested is always going to be higher than this one. And then, for example, in Mike's case, he did a crowdfunding campaign. He's got 38,000 here. He actually had, 50. This was 50. Oops, I keep doing too many zeros. So he asked for 50. And so far he's got 38, but that's kind of, all right. So these 3 columns are target, the amount that you have to request, which is going to be higher than you actually receive. And then what you actually receive is going to be in this column. Now, I put the whole 300 in 2024-25, but there's another year after that where we can continue fundraising. And what I'm asking my clients to do these days when they make a fun documentary film is to include a budget of $60,000 for impact. Does anybody know what impact is? Or an impact campaign? Does anybody know what that is?
Is that giving back?
No, but good guess. Mike, what's your guess?
Usually it's about having a mission with the documentary. So what's going to be the impact in terms of the campaign, depending on the subject matter. So if it's about housing issues, how do you improve those? If it's about, oh goodness, I pick a cause.
Well, yours. What about yours?
Yeah, that's a great question.
What is your cause, would you say?
Well, it just dawned on me, the reason why I'm doing this is telling the story of how the school once was is for 2043, the class of 2043. We won't be around. We may not be around. They're not going to know the greatness of this program and why this small Catholic school got behind basketball to get through these long winters. And these kids, they won't know the foundation of this or why it should be carried on or why it's such an important tradition. So
Yes.
I've recently came up with this and it made me cry. I was like,
Yeah,
that's why I'm doing this. I
yeah.
want to speak to generations 2 decades from now because half the people in my film won't be alive.
So what you're saying the cause is really the school itself, the institution of the school and what that school has been able to achieve. Anybody who then is the audience for this film?
Well,
Any guess?
right now it's all of us alumni, but long range, it's about the future classes that are going to be coming to the school, and so that they understand the tradition of why basketball is so important.
So if you had $60,000 to market your film to alumni, do you think that that would help you in both your fundraising and in creating impact for the film?
Absolutely. And yeah, I'm a big fan of impact producer.
Right. So the main audience is the alumni. But then you might have another audience, which might be alumni of other similar schools, or maybe Catholic schools, right? Then you might have another audience that is college basketball fans. And then you might have another audience, which is basketball fans. And the truth is right now, you're like, okay, it's the alumni. And it's always good to have a start, but the truth is we don't totally know where the film might go, especially once it's finished, it might speak to, I don't know, it might be sports fans. I don't know, right? But
yeah, well, definitely like how are small schools going to survive in the changes of NCAA sports, because you got big schools out in California that are just going to destroy because we don't have the alumni base to pay to play in the big business of college athletics.
Yeah. All of that, basketball players, it could be, so the impact campaign is really a way that you are going to get the film to the audience who needs to see it. Many years ago, I was hired to make a video to show to the Miami Beach Commission. Maybe there are something like 9 or 10 commissioners, and then the mayor is the deciding vote or something like that. Anyway, so I got footage from all the different arts organizations on Miami Beach. I made this 5-minute piece that was basically making the argument to Miami Beach to create a budget line item for the arts. They didn't have that at the time. Any money that they got on the beach came from Miami-Dade County, which is the big county as a whole. And so I made a 5-minute film. When I saw 2 commissioners wiping tears from their eyes, I knew that we had won, right? That line item got put in the budget, and that has since been worth millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars to artists on Miami Beach, artists and arts organizations on Miami Beach. 5-minute video, my audience was 10 people. Right? So the audience might be millions of people. In my case, it was 10 people. Right? And that was by far the most successful project I've ever done, in that it's been worth millions and millions and millions of dollars, and continues to be millions of dollars every year. But the audience was 10 people. There were people in the audience, you know, clapping and crying and all of that stuff, and all the arts were there, and, you know, we had banners and all that stuff. But ultimately, it was an audience of 10 who had the vote. And by the way, it was a unanimous vote. So in each of your cases, your film is going to have an impact. And a lot of times, well, in fact, when with my client with making the CMOS movie, I say he's not a filmmaker, doesn't know anything about film, doesn't come from the arts, nothing like that. So he imagined, you know, his idea of successful film was putting it on Netflix, right? But if you make a documentary and you put it on Netflix, the way I work with my clients, we raise all the money before we deliver the film to the distributor. We raise all the money because I want everyone to get paid, including you, before distribution, so that if distribution doesn't end up paying any money, which it frequently doesn't, then it's not an issue, because everyone's already paid, everything's already paid off. My proudest thing is that none of my clients are in debt when they deliver their film to the distributor. Okay. So his idea was, oh, we're going to make the movie, we're going to put it on Netflix, which might work, it might not work, you know, and Netflix is going to pay peanuts as if they possibly can and all of that. But he has a dream, he has a vision that he wants to go and speak in prisons and teach people entrepreneurship. That's his dream. And I said, well, what we really want to do is create a year-long impact campaign where you can do that before the film comes out on Netflix. You can go to prisons, you can go and teach entrepreneurship, you'll show the film. And the simplest impact campaign that I like to describe is so in this case, one prison or one detention facility, a month, 12 in a year. And then we go to foundations that are interested in either prison education or justice reform or whatever. And we raise maybe $36,000, $3,000 per event, or $48,000 or $60,000, but an amount per prison. And that includes a screening of the movie and a talk, maybe. I have a client, again, another one, never made a film before. She was a friend of mine. And one day she said to me, Joanne, I want to make a film. And I said, what are you talking about? I thought you worked in engineering. You know, she said, yes, but I've had a dream of making a film since I was a child. And she ended up making a documentary about toxic racism and sexism at the highest levels of the corporate world in the UK. Incredibly powerful, painful, and moving film. And last January, she hadn't quite finished the film, and she signed her first two $5,000 contracts to go and show clips of the film at an organization and speak about her work. And she was so excited, and she said, Joanne, I can't believe it. I can't believe this happened. I signed 2 contracts for $5,000. And I said, well, what are you talking about? That was the plan from day one. I told you we were going to do that. I told you we were going to do that. You know what she's doing now? She's negotiating $75,000 contracts. Yeah, $50,000, $75,000 contracts with organizations to go and talk about her work and to have an impact on toxic racism and sexism in the professional world. So I take this little time out to talk about impact, because a lot of times filmmakers haven't been thinking about that. I have a friend, when I started coaching, but really before I started coaching, I met this, I have a friend who's a DP, and he invited me to a premiere of a movie, and it was called Life After Life. And the director had followed 3 men who had served life in prison and then got out on parole. And she'd started out with about 10 guys, ended up with these 3. 2 of them stayed out of prison. One of them went back to prison 10 years. It's called Life After Life. It's a very good film, Life After Life. And I said to her, well, you know, she was working 2 part-time jobs. She was a single mom with a 2-year-old. And I said, well, you know, how much would it take for you to replace what you're earning? And it was something like $25,000. She had 2 jobs. She was stressed out all the time with her child and everything to earn $25,000 a year. I said, I'm sure you can earn more than that on impact on your movies. And within 2 months, she had quit her jobs. And she's been supporting herself from her films ever since. And it's all about connecting with organizations, doing screenings. The first time I saw her film, it was at the University of California, Bolt Law School. And we were in the big lecture hall where all the students sit at desks, you know. And when I sat down at my desk, she had an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper on the desk. And one side had information about the movie and the other side had information about justice reform. And then she had a panel, and she was on the panel. The 2 men who were in the film, who were out, who are now justice advocates and help other people get out of prison, they were on the panel, and then 2 executive directors of organizations that deal with justice reform. So that was the premiere of the film. We had a panel that talked about justice reform. The place was packed out with University of California students. And then it turned out when they did the Q&A, there were all these people there who also had got out of prison. I learned about the University of California prison to college pipeline program. I learned about all these different things. It was one of the most powerful film watching experiences of my life. You know, and I just learned all of this stuff about what's happening in the world of justice reform and so on. And as I said, she's been making a living ever since. It's now about 7 years later, because it was right before I started coaching. Formally, I guess. I guess I coached her anyway. But it's all on impact. And this is a very important thing. So I'm asking my clients now to add in $60,000 on their budgets for impact. And I really haven't worked. One of my clients now is first time is working with this organization. I know their ideal budget is $60,000, and they put the impact campaign together, and they contact the connections and all of that. So if we go back to my fundraising targets here, I basically had for 2024 to 25, that's where we're going to be raising the bulk of the money. And then as the film is finished, we can raise that extra 60, and it's nearly always going to come from foundations, maybe individuals as well, you know. When I get into the 7 different ways of fundraising, I'll go back to this. All right. Does anybody have any questions about this tool here?
So you mentioned for the impact, where do you note that in here in terms of what is needed, or is that a line item expense?
Well, technically speaking, the way I have it here, this should now, we all kind of were at 300, right? But now the budget is now 360. Okay. So now I'm raising 300 in 2024 to 25, and then 60 in 25 to 26, because this is really the year that the film is most likely to be coming out, right? If you finish your film after about July, August, your film is probably going to come out in 2025. So, you know, so one of the things that I learned as a fundraiser, and it was really odd, you know, when I was in Florida, we always worked 2 years in advance. So as a fundraiser, I wasn't thinking about 24 to 25. I would raise money for 25 to 26. I'd be working now on 25 to 26. And then when I moved to California, they were raising money in the same year. And I thought it was really weird. But so now I teach that way of doing it. But you know, you're going to want to be looking forward to raising money for the next year as well. Nobody has any questions? I mean, good. If you don't have any questions, good. Or are you just overwhelmed and can't speak?
Can I ask you a question about the crowdfunding?
Yeah.
Don't you almost need, I mean, I see now people are putting anything, they're getting money for funerals and everything else, but when crowdfunding first started and a lot of my associates were doing it, it seemed so difficult, and that you almost needed a team to help you stay on top of it, the monitoring. It's not about just putting something up there. You have to do a lot of work in terms of reaching out. So what is it? I mean, as a filmmaker, I mean, because you're doing so many things, so you have to develop a team to help you.
That's not my methodology. I would say if you go and Google and read about crowdfunding, they'll tell you to do it that way. It's just not my methodology. The methodology I use is very low key. I prefer if people do it with another person as a team, sure. But I have a lot of clients who do it by themselves. But we are not trying to raise $100,000. You know, we're trying, as I said, the highest amounts. I had 2 clients, the same one with the racism and sexism movie, she raised $67,000. And another client I had raised $67,000. But as I said, I see it as part of a whole fundraising campaign, not the fundraising campaign. Right? I would never suggest somebody go and try and raise $300,000 on a crowdfunding campaign. Right? There are companies out there that you can hire to run your crowdfunding campaign. But the truth is, most of my clients are not at a point where they have a big enough network. Now, Mike might be because of the school and all of that, but most of my clients are not at a point where they have a big enough network that they could hire a company that would do the kind of $100,000 up. And so I just focus on more modest campaigns that one person can handle. And as I said, we start at 20,000. With my super beginners who are making their first short, who don't know anything, I give them the choice of raising $11,000 or $12,000. But we do it in a very low key way, and you know, one person can handle it. Great question. Anyone else?
I have a question. It's just, I guess it's about the distinction of the impact. So like in this example, the 300,000 is to make the film. The 600,000 is basically what you're doing with it after. How it's, or 6,000, sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Is that only because it's confusing here, because impact producer is such a big thing here in the DMV area now. Everybody's calling themselves an impact producer. That I'm just trying to understand like what the separation is.
So my example with the CMOS movie, you know, if he had not known me, he would have spent $300,000. Actually, we're doing a $500,000 budget. So he would have spent $500,000 on making a film, and then he would have tried to sell it to Netflix. There's no impact campaign. Does that make sense? Right. No impact campaign. But now he understands what an impact campaign is. He wants to take his film into prisons. We will raise money from foundations that are interested in prison education in prisons. And we'll raise the $60,000. And there are much higher budgets than that for impact, but that's that you can imagine that if you had $60,000, even if you just used it for marketing, that would help your film, right? But impact is a bit more complex, but it's interesting, you know, one of the best websites, if you want to get an education about documentary filmmaking, one of the best websites is ITVS. ITVS is the commissioning arm of PBS. So you go to itvs.org, and it would take you years to read the whole thing, right? It would take you years to read the website. Case studies and this and that and grants, and they give money to filmmakers. I used to read for ITVS, by the way. I used to be a reader for their grants. And you can learn a lot from ITVS, and they do have a lot of case studies, and they have a lot of impact case studies. And so you'll see the difference between making a film and put it in what I call traditional distribution. Netflix may sound very contemporary, but I call that traditional distribution. There's that, and then there's a difference between that and impact. My client who made the film about the racism and sexism, her film is not in distribution yet. Why would she put her film in distribution if she can go and earn $75,000, right? She's not going to put that film in any kind of traditional distribution, probably until after she makes her second film. You know, and even then, why? Why would she do that? So the impact piece is something that, have you made films before, Felicia? No, okay. So basically it's like a completely new concept. Usually when a filmmaker has made, it's a completely new concept. You know, you're going to tell the story of your step-grandfather and his work in the civil rights movement. Where do you think would be the most powerful place for you to put your film in front of audiences?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because so much of what I want to do with the impact is influencing younger generations to pick up the activism arm. So,
Absolutely. What age do you think?
probably 18.
So high school?
Yeah, sorry. Yes, I could see seniors in high school, at least, you know, learning. That's a good idea, education.
Yes. So again, I go back to my fundamental campaign. One school a month for 12 months. Go to foundations that fund high school education to fund the impact campaign. And one of the things I ask my clients is on a spectrum, on a scale, from this sounds like hell to me to this sounds like heaven to me. I've never said that before, that just came out. How do you feel about taking your film and speaking with your film? Felicia, how do you feel on a scale of, with that?
Oh, I'd be very comfortable once it's done. And
Okay, so on the spectrum, you're somewhere over here. When I told Lawrence, the CMOS guy, this idea, he was way over here. I'm dying to go and speak in prisons and do that. Oh, and I'll take my film. Yes, okay, right? So it's been a dream of his for a long time, So, and then on the other end, I had a client who made a film about being kind of growing up as a member of the Grateful Dead community, you know, a deadhead. And in her story, she wasn't going to do this until she worked with me, but it ends up that her story is that at the age of 16, she was being sexually molested at home and being raped in high school. And she had taken to living in her car, and she had decided to kill herself. And she was approached by these two girls that she met, who realized that she had a car. And they said, well, we're going to a Grateful Dead concert and we have 3 tickets and we'll take you if you'll drive us there. It was a several hours drive. And so she thought, well, I guess, they're nice. I'll drive them there and then I'll kill myself after. And she drove them to the Grateful Dead concert, and she went to the concert with them, and she became completely embraced by this very loving community. Makes me want to cry anytime I tell this story. I thought the Grateful Dead were all about sex and drugs and rock and roll, but they had this, the Deadheads had this very, very deep value system, which is what she explores in the movie, right? But her rapist from high school is still at large. So she doesn't even go by her real name on social media. So she's at the other end of the spectrum. She is never going to go and show her film and talk about her film, right? But every filmmaker is different. I have another filmmaker. He's not a documentary filmmaker. He's a fiction filmmaker. And I said, so how much marketing do you want to do with your film? He said, 0 at the end of that conversation. Now he knows now he can't get away with that. That's not going to work. But that was when we were first working together, he was like, no, never, 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 never. I said, okay. Mike, sorry, you've had your hand up for a while.
Thanks. And I want to plant this seed. I don't know if it's something that you can answer now or maybe tomorrow, but back to sort of the crowdfunding. The situation that I'm in is there are multiple places where the college is asking of the alumni. I could list them: the Bonna Athletic Fund, the Sixth Man Club, which is to get the team on the road and in a private jet. There's the Boulder Bonaventure campaign. There's the new gym that they want to create, the practice facility. There's the Bob Lanier reading campaign. Then there's the NIL, name, image, and likeness. And those last couple of things have to be, well, the NIL has to be done outside the alumni. It can be done with the alumni, but not, the school can't get involved. And then there's me, and then, which is actually the glue to the story that holds everything, the whole history of the school together. I did a wonderful little 90-second interviewed a player from the 80s, had it scored, put it out on Giving Tuesday. I got 1 donation. I have an email list of like 300, and I got 1 donation for $100. It was a repeat person who's already given 250, 500. And that was it. And it's just like, there's donor fatigue amongst this base of 30,000 alumni. So I need to figure out a way to work around corporate sponsors, going to the chamber. I'm researching all the PBS stations because the school is in New York. I could get this, and our students come from Buffalo, Syracuse, Rochester, Long Island, and New York City, New Jersey. But there's just this issue of donor fatigue. And, I don't know how you and others work around that. If you have a quick answer, I can think about it.
So this is my answer. So I don't worry about things like that. Although, I mean, it's a real thing. I don't want to tell you this is not a real thing. That's a real thing. But I don't worry about things like that.
That's
what
great.
I want to do is create an ask that's so powerful that they will be interested. So when I work with my clients, did I tell you? No, I didn't tell you, because I was talking about it on the podcast earlier. So I just have a book came out. This is my author copy. That's why it has Not for Resale on there. And
congratulations.
My work. Thank you. A 7-step system. So a few years ago, I said to a coach, I work one-on-one with my clients. I don't know how I would work any other way, And she gave me this great answer. She said, Well, so right now you don't know a way that you could work with more than one-on-one with people. But imagine one day you will know how to do that. And I said, okay, I can imagine that. And she said, you don't know today, but one day you will. And as a result of that little enigmatic conversation, I looked at my work with my clients and I realized, oh, I have a 7-step system. And I take my clients through this system. Well, and that's what I wrote this book about. It's a 7-step system. But the beginning of the system is that I facilitate distribution for all my clients' films. And most filmmakers are trying to make films without having distribution. So imagine I'm now making an ask, and everybody here is an alumna. We're all alumni
Yes.
of St. Bonaventure, is it?
Yes.
St. Bonaventure. Okay, we're all some St. Bonaventure alumni. So here's the ask. First of all, oh, can you make a donation to this movie that we're making about St. Bonaventure? Okay. Now, how about this? I have just signed a contract with a PBS station, and
Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse. Yep.
yes, and they have a viewership of 5 million people, and they would like to have the film screening in February 2024, which is something History Month, and we're excited to launch the film then. And I need to have another $250,000 to complete the film, and $60,000 for an impact campaign that's going to reach alumni from the past and future students of the college to learn about the history of St. Bonaventure and to get it in front of millions of people on their television stations. Are you going to give to me now? Who's going to give to me now?
That's it.
So because
It's a major recruiting tool. It's a major fundraising tool. When this is done, this will help them raise millions of dollars because
the way most filmmakers are looking for money is asking to make their film. I don't ask for money to make the film. I ask for money to finish the film and get it out into distribution. Those are two completely separate things. Okay, so the ask when you have distribution is a very different ask. And so, one time I'm half Trinidadian, and one time I was in Trinidad at the Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival, and it's a fantastic film festival. They have fantastic education for filmmakers. So I was part of a team of professionals, and in the morning, the filmmakers were practicing their pitches, and it was kind of a, like a speed dating thing. So they would pitch with me, and they'd pitch with you, and they'd pitch with Felicia, they'd pitch with Jamila, they'd pitch with, right? And so as we went through however many it was, 15 or something filmmakers, they would practice their pitch, and I would give them feedback. And I'm very good at pitching. I'm very good at teaching pitching, I should say. It's one of the things I do. I focus really my clients' attention on is pitching. So I would say about 50% of filmmakers, when you say to them, when you challenge them and say, well, when is your film going to be finished? They'll say, oh, I don't know.
I get that all the time. Even the coach of the basketball team. When's it going to be done?
Yeah, most filmmakers don't know. Then there was some, probably not 50%, it's probably much smaller, it's more like 10%, 10% really smart. When's your film going to be done? Oh, when I raise the money, because they realized I was interested in the money. Oh, when I get the money. That's not how I teach my clients how to pitch.
what is the better answer to that question when
We
someone
have, so I'm going to use PBS as an example. We have just signed a contract with PBS. They want to screen the film in 2024 in February. And I need to have the money in by this date so I can complete the film for distribution. Well, February 2024 is too soon. I think I said 25 the first time. But I never am pitching to raise money to make the film. I'm pitching to finish the film for distribution. It's a completely different ask. And with my clients, we work on that and work on it and work on it.
yeah.
No filmmaker ever wants to say how much money they need. Was that a loud intake of breath, Mike?
Yeah, it was, because I've already made the mistake of trying to answer these questions with the coach and the coach's wife, and and I just see their eyes rolling backwards or gasping, or why is it going to take so long and all that. It's just that there needs to be a better answer. They all want this done, and it's like I feel the pressure on my back to do this, and I get $100 donation.
Been designated to make this film. It's like me lying in bed and saying, God, what do you want me to do? Tell me what you want to do. Do you know how many times God talks to you? Once every few years, God talked to me. Joanne, go and work with filmmakers. No, tell me something else. Give me something else to do. I'll do that instead, and then I ask for another 2 years, and then I get the same answer. I've been designated to work with filmmakers, right? I just didn't want to believe it because it was too scary. I'd already tried it. It had already fallen apart. My life was ruined. And it hadn't worked. So I was like, oh, let me do something else. Let me get a real job. I'm going to go fundraising. I'm going to go raise $38 million to build a new YMCA. I'm going to go raise $5 million to build a new youth radio. And, I'm going to be really happy doing that. And it's like, no, I ended up spending 7 years in bed, too sick to work. And I was so scared of doing what my calling was that I lay in bed for 7 years, hearing the answer every 2 or 3 years and saying, let me do something else. So you have been designated to make this film.
Oh, yeah. And if you understand the future of colleges, they're going to be shuttering because they can't keep their doors open. And this is the first Franciscan college in the United States, the Prayer of St. Francis. I mean,
it's a great story. It's just that's not what sells the film.
Right.
That's all I'm saying. It's not what sells the film. When I train my clients in pitching, they're allowed 2 sentences to talk about the film. Max. I'm like, so when they start with me, they'll be talking and talking and talking. I said, that's great. Now we've got to get it down to 2 sentences because that's not what we're talking about. That's not what we're raising money on. But yeah, saying, well, it'll be finished when we get the money. No, that's not gonna work either. It's not gonna work on people. And so one of the things that actually I said this in my book, a lot of people believe, my next book is going to be called Myths of Fundraising. And here's a myth. You have to know people to be able to raise money. This is a myth. I have raised millions and millions of dollars. I have clients now that I have helped raise millions of dollars. I have clients who have raised $12,000, and I have never known anybody. I've never known anybody. I believe that what you need is an excellent project. Does everybody love the sound of these films that you're making? I'd be super happy. I don't know anything about basketball. I'd be super happy to watch this movie. I definitely want to know about Felicia's step-grandfather. I definitely want to know about the Cuban percussionist. And I definitely want to know about the biohacks in Connor's film. That's going to make money, that film. But, you know, raising money for these films is not necessarily about the story. It is, but it's what's going to get people behind you to fund it is being able to show where it's going to be seen, who is going to see it, and when by. You know, that is important. So the project, as if it's not excellent, I don't see the point. You know, so it's got to be excellent. And I don't mean, like, I know my client Karen, the one who made the film about Greenwood, Oklahoma. There's nothing about that film that is technically great. She's a very beginner filmmaker. You know, it's not that, but the project is excellent. You know, when I first met her, she couldn't pitch to save her life, you know, and we were on Clubhouse and there were all these famous producers on the Clubhouse and all of this, and she comes on and she says, I want to make a movie, and you know, this was her other movie. She's like, I want to make a movie about my my uncle. You know, and people would like, they're all stuck. They're not coaches, so they don't know how to pull things out of people. But, you know, everyone was like stumped. And I said, so who's your uncle? Well, he just got nominated again into the Hall of Fame in Arkansas. Oh, okay. What did he get nominated for? Well, he's a coach. Oh, he's a coach for what? Basketball. And everybody went, I love basketball, right? That's her other film that she made. And I said to her, Karen, you know, you're going to see, because she was like, where am I going to show my film? How do I get it on Netflix? I was like, when you make your film about your uncle, you're going to see that your audience is people who love basketball in Arkansas, right? That's the audience, people who love basketball in Arkansas. And then it might be people who love basketball in, what's the state next door? Is it Missouri? Anyway, and she kind of lives in 2 states. She always goes back and forth, and Oklahoma. I don't quite understand her geographic life, but she's always in 2 or 3 states. So, you know, and then people who love college basketball, and people who, you know, love, you know, and I said, and it's going to be local first. You're going to find your audience locally first. And she really never got what I was talking about. She's like, oh, I want to get it on big. I want it here, you know. And I said, oh, you know, okay, but start with the local. And at the same time, she was making this other film about Greenwood, Oklahoma, and it's not really about the massacre that happened 100 years ago. It's really about the community today and how resilient the community is, and there are a lot of business owners, and that strip that got destroyed, you know, there's businesses there now, and they're very small businesses, and it's a poor community and all of that, but, you know, very strong, very proud community, and it's about all the people. And when Karen first showed those films, and she came back to me, she's like, oh, Joanne, you were right. People came up to me afterwards and they all said, I never saw myself on a screen. I never saw my community on the screen. I never saw myself before on the screen. So powerful for people to see themselves. You know, the technical quality to me is very, very little important in comparison to the power of that, the power of people of Arkansas seeing themselves on the screen. And she keeps being told the same thing over and over again. The last time I saw her, she was in Miami. She was showing the Oklahoma film at the Black Police Museum here in Miami. She's been to, I don't know, all over the country showing her film. It seems to have settled in museums. And now she's going to let it go. It's going to Freestyle Entertainment. But still, you know, it's a very powerful piece of work, especially for the audiences that she made it for. It's a very powerful piece of work to see that people can survive such a tragic, disastrous, awful thing. And that's not what her film is about. Her film is about resilience and moving on and moving forward. So for me, the project, if it's excellent, we can raise money for it. I don't care who you know or who you don't know. If the project is excellent, and all of your projects are excellent already, they haven't been made yet. You know, they're all really good topics. I don't meet people who are lazy and do bad work. I don't meet those kind of people. They don't come to me. They go somewhere else. They go to LA. I don't mean to say bad things about LA. There's great stuff about LA. I don't mean to say bad things about it. It's just that those are not my people. I have some clients who live in LA, but most of my clients tend not to, and they tend to be very, very dedicated, very serious, very considerate, conscientious, diligent, dedicated people. Those are the people who come to me. And then we take that excellence and then we add on there fundraising techniques that work, you know, and fundraising is not rocket science by any means, but there's a lot of strategy involved, a lot of tactical pieces that people don't know. And as I said, I was a fundraiser already for years. I'd already raised loads and loads of money before I got my first training. It's a very odd thing how little training there is for fundraising. And then I specialize in fundraising for movies, which is its own special thing, you know, and so much can be taught. And most filmmakers, when I meet them, sometimes they have tried raising money and sometimes they haven't. But most filmmakers have not really learned what they need to be successful. And most of my clients are not interested in making a movie. They're interested in making this movie, then another movie, and then another movie. You know, they're interested in making this something that can be full-time, that they can, you know, really use as a career. And so learning about fundraising and learning about finance and learning about those sides of things is really, really important. So I was planning on, I thought we were going to 4:30. 4:30. I believe we're going to 4:30, Ariana. She's giving me time checks in the background. So now I just want to ask you all, having done our back of the envelope budgeting, which is really the most important kind of budgeting, because most people are interested in budgets. I'm interested in, well, how much can you raise, which is a different question. But having done the back of the envelope budgeting, what do you think is your number one fundraising type for your film? I'm just going to ask everybody. Mike, what is your number one fundraising type out of the ones that we had to choose from? The most money is what I mean, your number one.
I think I always thought it'd be major donors, people who can write a big check. They've written checks to the school, and this should have been done yesterday. I mean, there are people who can do this. And it might be a combination of an alumni who has an insurance company, say in Buffalo, New York, the schools in Western New York, that they could somehow use their company to support their school. There's a guy already, his family writes checks, millions of dollars. There's 4 brothers and a dad. They all write $1 million each year. That's $4 million. Can't
From
they
an
just write
insurance
it?
company?
An insurance company, yeah.
Amazing, huh?
Yeah. So can I get one sponsor for 250? I just think that'd be the way to go.
Yes, yes. Felicia, what do you think is your number one fundraising type?
I always thought it was grants, just given the nature of the topic. But you really have me thinking that maybe it is individual donors once I get myself down to South Carolina. And I've already networked with a lot of people online, like Historic Columbia and all that. But there are people down there that are still alive that knew my step grandfather and want to tell their story. So I'm thinking maybe it is individual donors.
Okay, great. Connor, are you there?
Yes. Yeah, this is what I think it might be a crowdfunding campaign, which I guess would include the large donors and the small donors, because one of the individuals that I'll be interviewing, he told me, yeah, he's very interested in doing a documentary like this, and he has a list of, I haven't seen the list, but that includes all of the foundations and the donors of the device that he created, one of the quantum healing devices. So I think it's a matter of which angle do I want to go towards. Is it, towards the foundations, or just set up a crowdfunding campaign?
I'm asking you specifically though, what is the number one type that's going to raise you the most money? Because I'm teaching you the concept of the mix, right? But what's the one?
Right.
The number one?
That's what I don't know yet. I think it would be a crowdfunding campaign.
I don't think so. Not for
No.
300,000.
No, not for the full amount. The number one most, I think, would be the individual donors.
Yes, I think so. Yes.
Yeah.
Jamila, what do you think is the number one type of fundraising for you, for your film?
Oh, it's confusing. I think foundation would be my first look. Because I need to do interviews and possibly travel, so travel grants. I think foundations, and then, like you said, crowdfunding. You're doing like 20,000 at a time. So I think we use foundations first, then crowdfunding.
Okay, great. All right, I'm going to read you a little bit from my book.
Okay.
I have been very anti reading my book because I'm afraid I'm going to find spelling mistakes. All right, this is on page 119. The importance of individual donors. If you are an individual filmmaker or a nonprofit, you must start to build a donor list, and must is not a word I use very often. The majority of all funds given to causes in any year comes from individuals. Here are some recent statistics. In 2021, the largest source of charitable giving came from individuals who gave $326, no, sorry, $326 billion, representing 67% of total giving. Americans gave $499 billion in 2022. These are numbers from Charitable Giving Statistics, National Philanthropic Trust. So if 67% of total giving comes from individuals, why were these, remember I referred to the brilliant documentary filmmakers who had already got the $100,000 grant, but they hadn't asked for individuals. So if 67% of total giving comes from individuals, why were these brilliant documentary filmmakers not asking for those donations? If individuals gave $499.33 billion, why are perfectly intelligent filmmakers not looking for that money? My theory, because sitting down and writing a grant does not bring up the same level of fear as does asking people for money. At the same time, sitting down and writing a grant does not help your visibility in the same way as does letting your community know that you are seeking funds for your film. Also, if you win a significant grant award, it's time to leverage that success to let your people know how successful you are, and they will love even more to support you financially. People give to success. So the answer that I'm going to suggest is true for all of you is individual donors. Is going to be your top way of raising money. And which is not to say that you're not going to get grants, so that you're not going to get foundations, and you're not going to get, but the reason those women, those 5 women filmmakers with their $100,000 grants were stuck is because a funder wants to see other money coming in. Right? So you get if you get a grant for $100,000, that's great, but nobody else is going to give you a grant. They want to see that people are involved. So when I was running this campaign is when you're building a building. So I was running this capital campaign for Youth Radio, and we needed $5 million. And as I said, they were, when I on day one that I started working with them, I got their tax return, their 990s for over the years. That was my first mistake. I should have got the tax returns before I worked for them, but that's another story. But the day one, I got all the 990s, and I looked at them and I saw that, 99% of their income came from foundations. They're still to this day foundation darling. Their education that they do is phenomenal. They work with young people. They also have a particular category where they work with kids who have run into trouble with the justice system, and they turn them out as broadcast journalists. It's fantastic, right? And journalism is under attack. So, it's also a very important training to do. Anyway, so I wrote a proposal to the Kresge Foundation, which funds capital grants. And they had a couple of people on their capital campaign committee who laughed at me when I said I wanted to raise money from the Kresge Foundation. It's a very, very old blue chip foundation. If you go to any symphony, opera, and ballet that was built in the early part of the 20th century, it will say Kresge Foundation on it. Kresge was the money from the Five and Dime company, the Kresge stores that weren't open by the time I came to America, but you probably all grew up with Kresge, Five and Dime, right? That's where the money comes from. My favorite foundation. And I wrote to Kresge and I asked $1 million, and they said, no, we're not going to give you $1 million, but you could always ask for less. So I got $250,000. But the thing with Kresge is that the only money they give you has a match that you have to make, and you have to raise that money from individual donors. So I knew that Youth Radio had no capacity to raise money from individual donors. And I saw in their board reports year after year after year at the retreat that they said they wanted to raise money from individuals, and then they didn't do it. So I was like, okay, I'm going to find a way for them to raise money from individuals. I'm going to get them money, and it's going to be a carrot to get them to raise money from individual donors. Right? So they gave us $250,000. Then Youth Radio fired me. And when I got my apology from the executive director, I'd already raised hundreds of thousands of dollars in my 5 months there, right? She told me the story. So several months later, Kresge calls her up, and they said, you know what, we're going to give you some more money. And she's like, oh, thank you very much. We're going to give you $500,000. And then several months went by, and they called her up and they said, we're going to give you some more money. we're going to give you $750,000. So by now, the match is $250,000. So in order for them to get the $750,000 from Kresge, they had to raise $250,000, right? So that's how Youth Radio finally started an individual donor campaign that they had never done before. But they got $750,000 to encourage them to raise $250,000. There's always this interplay between grants and foundations and individuals. You know, you always want to have one lead to the other kind of thing. So if you get a grant, you know, that's a reason to go after some individual donors. You get individual donors, then get some grants in, and it kind of works like that. But anytime a grant funder is looking at you, they want to see that you have support from the community, even if it's a $20,000 crowdfunding campaign. You know, that will show, because it takes 100 donors to raise $10,000. And so if you have 100, if you raise 20,000, that's 200 donors. If you raise 40,000, that's 400 donors. So you'll start showing that you've got community support and people are behind you. And that's going to be interesting to a funder. Okay, so every nonprofit, except for Youth Radio until I got there, every nonprofit is going to put effort into getting donors. And the way that is very common for a nonprofit to do it is that they send out a letter in November, December. Does anybody know why it's at that time of year?
Tax purposes, end of the year.
End of the year tax purposes. Why? What does that mean? Why taxes at the end of the year?
Well, if you're super wealthy, you're going to owe money, and you can give to something like a charity to get a write-off, and therefore you're not taxed on that, or you're taxed less on that amount of money.
Yes. Now, Mike, if I had paid you to say that, you couldn't have said it more perfectly.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Because it's totally wrong. So so a lot of time, this is one of the myths of fundraising. Actually, let me write this down because it's going in my next book. So a lot of times people think that people give in order to get a write-off on their taxes. That is not why people give. People give to causes and to people they believe in. And then we, as professionals, need to provide them with the additional benefit of getting a write-off on their taxes. But people give to causes and people that they believe in. And that is 100% across the board.
So I'm glad I can help you on your next book.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
The myth number 2.
It's a myth, but it's, you know, it's a good myth. Years ago, one of my colleagues, he was an editor, and we worked together for years and years. And we had a joke between us that we were going to put an ad in the paper, say, drug laundering opportunity, fund our film. Especially living in Miami, we were like, yeah, you know, we'll launder your money for you. There's even movies made about people laundering their drug money by making movies. So there's, you know, I'm sure that there are people who've done it, but for the most part, people are not interested in supporting something because they get a write-off on their taxes, right? So now the person who wants to support the Bonaventure School may very well not be the same person who's going to support the Cuban percussionist movie, right? So it's our job to identify those people. I always say there's two types of funders, donors. There's the donors who fund people and the donors who fund animals. I don't get the animal people. I've never crossed that line. That's not, that's not my people, you know? But, and is anybody here an animal donor? Right? So if you want to go to Vic Felicia and raise money for animals, you know who to go to.
The kittens get all the money.
The what?
The kittens,
The kittens.
the cats, you
That's
know.
another
Yep.
myth. Oh my God, that is so good. The kittens get all the money. But you see, it's not true. They would never get money from me. They'd never get money from me. Because to me, the things that are important are about people. But there are many people who the things.
No,
that are
but
important
seriously,
are-
like people will donate more to animals and animal shelters than they'll do like to human beings. I
that
mean,
is absolutely a myth.
yeah,
Well, I can tell you why, because I'm one of those people that actually goes and lobbies my reps to change laws too, because they don't have a voice. We do. We have to speak for them. So
okay. there
we're
you go.
supposed to do it for kids too.
But the idea that people give more money to animals than to humans is absolutely a myth. And you can go and do the research and find out. But that is not to say that people don't give a lot of money to animals. I have a client who's making nothing but movies about Mustangs. Right? That's her thing. You know, I've learned a lot about Mustangs from her and the whole Mustang population and the problems that they have and all of that. But you know, people give to animals, that is sure, but not everybody. And as I said, there are animal people. There are animal people and they will give to animals, and that's their passion. There are people who are classical music people. I'm like, classical music for what? You know what I mean? It's like everybody has their things. Cuban percussionist, I'm in, you know, but there's another, you know, I play classical music, but there are people who give to classical music. That's their passion. That's what they love, you know? So, as I said, our number one job is to find out what an individual is interested in, and then to offer them what they're interested in. So when we have when we find donors, or who was it said? Oh, Mike, I think it was saying, no, Connor was saying he has somebody who created this device who has lists of people, of companies, various things, you know. And then, you know, it's going to be Connor's job to identify who is really interested in a film that talks about this device and other quantum healing biohacks. You know, there are going to be people who are going to be really interested in that. And there are going to be people on that list who are like, oh, hell no, I'm going to give them to kittens. Right? Because we're all different. But our job as fundraisers is to really identify what it is they want. When I was working at the YMCA, one of the things that I needed to do with donors was they were already YMCA donors, right? And then every year we would go to them and we would make an ask, and there are several different asks. So there's kind of the why. You can give money to the why. But we had a youth department and we had a senior department. So if I'm talking to a donor, do they want to give to the youth department? Do they want to give to the senior department? Well, our youth department has a training program and they're learning how to fix computers, and they get certified in a Microsoft certification when they finish their program. Maybe they want to fund that. Well, we have another program where our youth are learning how to become entrepreneurs. Maybe they want to fund that. So it's, in that case, we had a lot of things that we could offer, but somebody might give a check to the Y, or they might give a check to the music program. it depends on what their interests are, right? And that's our work to find out. You know, maybe somebody wants to fund the film, or maybe somebody wants to fund the impact. Those are different asks. So again, does anybody have any questions? So I'm gonna close at 4:30 and we'll be back at 1:30 tomorrow. And I do want
I have
to,
one question.
yeah,
Okay, so how getting these individual donors, so, you know, aside from the invisible people that you get on, people that you really don't know do crowdfunding, you said the stuff.
okay, wait, another myth.
Okay,
You're all writing my book for me.
all these invisible people.
Invisible people you get through crowdfunding, okay?
Okay, how do we find when developing this list? Because all my fellow filmmakers are poor. And so how do I find these potential donors to start making this list?
Okay, so the second myth that you gave me so kindly is basically everyone I know is poor, right? And on some level, I'm sure that's true. Nearly every client of mine has said that to me at some point. And you know, and I've said, I don't move in circles with wealthy people. I don't know wealthy people. But what I'm very, very focused on is having an excellent project and then having an excellent ask. And it makes all the difference. You know, I just had this, so a few weeks ago, a very dear friend of mine, he's a film producer, fiction film producer, Jamin O'Brien. And he approached me about, because I also do fundraising. That's another program that I offer where I take over the fundraising for an organization. And so he approached me and they want to create a film school in New Jersey, but not to teach filmmaking, but to teach the below the line jobs. So, you know, gaffer, first AC, health and safety, all of these jobs, you know, that you can get in the industry. So, you know, and he said, you know, and I've never known any people with money, and, you know, I don't know people, and I don't know. And he was one of the people that I said, so how much do you need? And he was like, he didn't have any idea. I'm like, are you going to build a brick and mortar school? Right? That'd be a few $1 million if you want to build a brick and mortar school. He's like, oh, I don't really think. Well, you know, so we narrowed it down. But I said, look, it seems to me that, you know, we're going to hire me as a fundraiser. We're going to pay you something, pay the other guy something, and we need to rent a place, and we need to get our first cohort through. So we're going to hire people to train them, and we'll decide, is our first cohort 10 people, let's say, something modest. And I said, you know, maybe $100,000. So he doesn't know anybody with any money, right? So the next time I saw him, he said, so you'll never guess what happened. So he had been approached by somebody who's investing in films to take care of her investment in this particular film, right? She doesn't know anything about films. She just somebody with money. So she hired Jamin to come on and watch what was happening with her money. And so they, after the film was finished, they sat down for lunch one day, and he said to me, so guess how much I told her I needed for the school? I said, how much? And he said, $250,000. And I was so proud of him, you know, because we came up with that 100,000 and he must have thought about it. And it turns out when you have an excellent ask, you will find people to ask. And one person will introduce you to another, who will introduce you to another, who will, oh, you got to meet my friend so-and-so. But as long as you don't have the ask in a way that is powerful, then you're sort of in this position of, well, I don't know anybody with any money, right? But you heard the difference with the way that I pitched Mike's film, right? Once you know how to be able to do that, you will be able to use that ask to meet more people, right? Now, one time I worked with this young girl and she was making her first short film with me. And we went through all the people she had in her phone. She knew 22 people. I'm like, how can you live in the 21st century and only know 22 people? That's how shy she was. And we raised the money to make her short film. And I was so proud of her. And she was so frightened when she started with me. It was because she was too frightened to make a movie by herself. So she hired me. And she said the day that she stepped on the set to make her short film, she could feel all these people who had given her money surrounding her and supporting her to make her film. It was beautiful. And that's what I want for you all. But once you can ask in a way that is exciting, then you will find you meet more people who will come to you because you have an exciting ask. Most filmmakers cannot ask. They don't know how to say the money. They don't have a number. It's between this and that, a few 100,000, few 100 million between friends. It's maybe this, it's maybe that. I'll get it when I get the money, I'll get it done. It's like, oh, yeah. Oh, I don't have any distribution. I don't know what I'm going to do with the film when it's over. I don't know. I'll find out when I get there. Oh, I'll put it into a festival. Let's see what happens when it gets into a festival. Maybe that way I might get some distribution. Nobody wants to give to that mess. But that's how most filmmakers sound, And so what I would like to offer is for you to come and work with me. And we'll put the link to my calendar in the chat. And we can set up a time to discuss working with me. I used 2 years ago, I used to have 2 resumes. I had my filmmaking resume and I had my fundraising resume. And now I'm just one person. And I teach filmmakers how to raise money, And as I said, I have another program where I call it my virtual fundraising team, and I bring on a team of people and we do the fundraising for you. I don't think any of you are at that point, but we can certainly talk about it, but I think you probably all need some training so that you can, get to your first $100,000, your second $100,000, your third $100,000 to make these films that we've been discussing. And, but, what I've learned is that I have clients who've never made a film, don't know the first thing. I had a client who's the director of a film school, and they basically all know the same thing about fundraising, which is zero. And so I feel as though if you've never made a film before, like Felicia, learn how to raise money. If you've made a ton of films like Mike, learn how to raise money. It's all the same. It's all the same. I have a client now, you can look him up. Actually, look, Ariana can put Thomas Allen Harris. He's very well known in the documentary world. And we worked on a project. We raised about $2 million for this project. It was a series on PBS, 3-part series on PBS. And now we just passed $1 million that we're raising for a feature-length documentary that we're making. We just passed the $1 million mark. Now he's been making films for 20 years, and as I said, he's well known in the industry, but it's very exciting. And then we have a grant that we're putting in January that I was very disappointed we didn't get last year. We really didn't get it on a technicality. So anyway, we had, and it was a technicality. This is for the National Science Foundation. It was a technicality that the National Science Foundation told us to make. It's really frustrating. Anyway, so we had to wait another year. We're going in this year, and it's for $3.3 million for a series that's going to come out of that film. And, when I met Thomas, He was a great fundraiser, already made films. But, you know, the budget of those films was more like 200, 250, you know, those kind of numbers. You'll see his films are on ITVS. He got a lot of funding from ITVS. And, you know, this is a big step up to be, you know, getting here. And still, you know, there are things. The other day, we were working together, and Thomas we had composed an email to the head of a very major foundation. And so I said, so did that email go out? And Thomas said, oh, yeah, he just wrote back. He just wrote back like an hour ago. I said, well, let's write back. And he was like, really? And I was like, yeah, you know, he wrote back pretty quickly. We have to write back faster. He was like, really? I said, absolutely. So we wrote back like a couple of lines, sent it, and he wrote straight back. I said, you got to write back. We wrote back. And we had this boom, 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 go back and forth with this foundation head. And I said, we have to reply faster than a funder writes to us. And Thomas was really surprised. I was like, absolutely. And so we got pinned down a meeting in January. We know what the meeting is about, what the ask is going to be. We know all of those things going in. You know, he's funded in the past. He'll be funding again. And that work is, whether it's an individual, whether it's a foundation in this case, but our work is as stewards, it's called stewardship in the fundraising world, is as stewards of those relationships. And we grow those relationships, and we keep up the communication, and we you know, thank them. One of the fundraising mantras is 7 thank yous before you ask again. You know, 7 thank yous before you ask again. One of my mantras is no fundraising without training and without support. I think fundraising is a very hard thing. You know, it brings up our money shit. It brings up the other person's money shit, and it can be, you know, very triggering. So, you know, I train people to raise money, and they do very, very well. And, you know, my purpose is to help filmmakers make more movies. You know, I mean, if all these, well, we don't know. Robert, can you speak now? Are you able to speak? Because we don't know what your movie is. Maybe he's not there. Maybe tomorrow we'll find out. But it seems to me the world will be a much better place if we could have all these 4 movies out next year. What do you say? Yeah, Jamila.
Question. So how do you have to have all the pieces complete? I mean, in order to request funds, you have to, does the budget have to be, you know, does everything have to be finalized, or can you start requesting money as you're developing? Because writing the budget is one thing. Like, I'm in the process of finalizing my concept, you know. Now I got to do the budget. So do I have to have all those pieces before I start the fundraising campaign?
That is such a fantastic question. And so when I start working with a documentary filmmaker, I ask if my client is open to doing a crowdfunding campaign.
Mm-hmm.
If they say no, then we'll take a different tack. But if they say yes, and especially this is your first feature, right, Jamila? Right? If they say yes, then I prefer to start with a crowdfunding campaign. Let's say it's for $20,000, right? Now, and a crowdfunding campaign has the least amount of professional writing involved. It's less than a grant. It's less than a major grant, it's less than a letter of intent to a foundation, right? So it's the easiest start to fundraising. And it's a great way to practice your verbal pitching, which I believe is the most important skill for a 21st century producer to have, is the verbal pitch. Because in the end, you have to talk to people. Even Thomas going in meeting in January with the head of a foundation, it's a talk with a person, right? It might be in person, it might be on Zoom, but in the end, you're talking to a person, you're talking to a human being whose job it is to allocate funds, right? So a crowdfunding campaign to me is a fantastic practice, and a beginning tool. And then it puts $20,000 in your bank. I have a client, very experienced, and she's making a movie it's to do with abortion. And so we raised £25,000, I think it was in her case, £25,000. And she's not really raising the money herself. She's got all these connections. She's made stuff for BBC and ITV and National Geographic and all this. So she's pitching her project, and she wasn't getting anywhere. So she decided to take the money, and she's going to create the first third of the movie with her $25,000. So she just got back from Mexico shooting the first section, because it's looking at abortion laws in different countries. And Mexico was one of the ones she chose. So, and now she'll go back, and then she'll have, 10, 15, 20 minutes that she can go back and do the pitching rounds again with all her people that she knows. And, let's see where she gets, so it's just great to have some money to start with, In the meantime, you can be writing grants, you can be going to foundations and all that stuff, which we'll get into tomorrow. But yeah, great question. I think the order of things is super important. And so my first session with a client, I have this evaluation process. And so we establish the order that we're going to do things. And if somebody says they're open to doing a crowdfunding campaign, then I kind of like to start with that, because it really is good. It's good for many, many reasons: visibility, practice, money, lots of reasons. Okay, so tomorrow we'll be back at 1:30, and hopefully we'll hear from Robert tomorrow. I haven't heard from him for a long time. And tomorrow we're going to go through the 7 types of fundraising. I already got way into individual donors because it's the most important. Individual donors is the most important. I have a client, she's making a fiction film, and she didn't want to do a crowdfunding campaign, but we did an email campaign to people she knew, and she raised $50,000 that way. So individual donors is always going to be super, super important. In universities and hospitals, which are the largest nonprofits, they have entire teams of people devoted to nothing but major donors, and developing their donor list, So anyway, we'll go over all the different types of fundraising tomorrow. We'll get a bit more into the nitty-gritty with the different types. Okay. So thanks everybody for being here. And I'll see you. Did you have a question, Mike, or were you just saying?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
I'm just remembering. There's a
Yeah.
guy who donated $1,000 to my campaign. He was a player in the 1960s, 70s.
Nice.
And he said, I'll do more if somebody else is going to do more. So he said, I'll do 5,000, but he couldn't get anybody else to join him. And I tried I've got another guy who said, I'll do more, but what's this guy doing? So I just scheduled to meet with you on Monday. So but I don't know if you have a quick response at the moment of like, I think there's a lot of people sitting on the bench who are waiting for somebody else to come in and get this whole train rolling. So I really sense that, but I don't know how to unlock them or which one thing I could think about.
So I don't remember if it was an hour ago when I gave you the demo of the 2 different asks.
No. Right.
And I used your film as the example.
Right.
That's what's missing. What's missing is
Well, for him though, okay, all right. So for him, it's other people, but for what you're saying is the bigger picture is there needs to be this distribution that sort of pulls everybody forward.
yeah, it's the ask. And in your case, you have the people and they're there and they're ready, but they have not been asked appropriately. That's what I would say.
Okay.
Yeah. And Felicia, where did you take all these fundraising classes? I never see fundraising classes.
Well, part of it was my master's program. We had a whole class on fundraising, the whole semester of it. And then
Hey.
I'm a past president of Women in Film,
Aha.
in DC. So we have fundraising classes a lot.
Aha. Where did you take your producing program?
American University here in
Oh,
DC.
in DC. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I never hear anybody talking about taking fundraising classes in film school. This is the first.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Yours is definitely a different approach and it's brilliant. So.
What was their approach?
Alicia, I'm been a member years for New York Women in Film and Television.
Nice.
You know Terry Lawler?
I do.
Well,
Yes. Yeah.
yes.
But one of the Muse Awards one year and she was a host.
Yeah. So
hosted-
I was the DP for the Muse and Designing Winning Women Awards up to the time that she left. Yeah.
Yeah.
What
Right.
was their approach, Felicia, to
Oh,
fundraising?
About like, here's the foundation center. Here's how you go look things up. Almost like what you were saying about impact, like find grants and things that fit the project, and also about how your project may start out one way, but once you get into looking for money, you might change your story because of how the funding's given. So yours is just very different with the, almost starting with the distribution in mind first.
Oh, I know mine is different. I've even asked AI about, my stuff and there's nothing there. So I have my own way of doing things. But it's based on decades of fundraising, just in the ways that it's done elsewhere, so great. Oh yeah. Ariana said I did an undergrad fundraising workshop with her students when she was at Purchase University. But again, it wasn't something that was necessarily in their curriculum, so she squeezed it in. All right, so I'll see everybody tomorrow and ponder. Oh, thank you, Ariana. It really gave them confidence, she said. Ponder your fundraising targets. Maybe you make some changes, maybe you leave it the same. As I said, this is back of the envelope numbers, but just see what you can start thinking about. All right, see you tomorrow. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Joanne.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
On tomorrow. Bye.
Hi, thank you, Ariana.
Thank you.
Felicia. Oh, she just left. We'll catch you tomorrow.
Ariana.
Great workshop.
Well, I think.
I think it went really, really well. It was a great workshop. It was both a great reminder, and you've emerged so much in terms of your speed with having the book available. I'm really excited to read the book.
I couldn't believe I read a bit out of the book. I'm scared to read it.
You shouldn't be. I'm sure
Well,
you
I'm
can
just
see how to
scared that there's going to be typos, but I have 12 days to make changes. So Emily read it and really did like a proofread for me, and we found some things, and somebody found one other typo that we haven't been able to find, but I'm sure it's in here. He said the word film is misspelled. He said the word film is misspelled in the first few pages. I'm like, oh my God, but I can't find it.
Oh,
So,
that's gotta hurt, but
I'm like-
it'll be fine. It'll be fine. We used to get advanced copies when I had my internship at CBS, and we'd get advanced copies, and I'd take them, but they all had typos in them. This is just a part of the process. I think that it'll feel good with many eyes on it, kind of combing through every line.
Yes.
It's gonna be great.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much. You've just been fabulous. So
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, it was my first time. I was very nervous, but happy to pitch in again. And I'm gonna text Thomas. I text him sometimes, but I really haven't been working very much. Oh, let me stop the record.